My name is Peter Kim. I'm one of the co-founders for Polymer Labs. I'll be moderating the panel today.
Hey everyone, my name is Yuan. I'm an investor at Blockchain Capital. We're the oldest and first venture capital fund in the world to exclusively focus on crypto.
Hey everyone, I'm Mathijs. I work at Maven 11 Capital. We are a European crypto venture fund. I've been here since 7 years or something. I think we mainly invest in infrastructure.
Hey everyone, my name is Roy. I'm one of the partners at Longhash Ventures. We specialize in bootstrapping ecosystems. Our Fund 1 was focused on DeFi. Fund 2 was focused on multi-chain future at the infrastructure layer. We also have an accelerator arm. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I'm Clayton at Figment and Figment Capital. Figment's a staking infrastructure company, and Figment Capital is a venture fund that we spun out of the organization that primarily invests in the infrastructure layer of Web3.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introductions. Since you guys all sound so excited, I'd love to hear from you why you're so excited to be here, not only at IBC Istanbul, Dev Connect, but generally the blockchain industry.
Yeah, I think crypto has the potential to change the world, make it more fair and accessible for everyone. Here specifically about interoperability, right, IBC. We believe in a world with a lot of change, roll-ups and whatnot, a multi-chain future, as they would say. A logical consequence of that is that interoperability becomes more important, and therefore IBC becomes more important and will help drive adoption.
As a partner at a fund, I'm excited to be here because I could make a lot of money. But also being in Turkey is nice when thinking about the next adoption cycle. If looking at institutions and end users, our perspective is the majority of end users are going to be coming from regions that aren't in North America or even Europe. To be honest, just given regulatory uncertainty and the fact that there's a lot more value that can be had by users and regions outside of those places. So yeah, and Istanbul is cool.
I'm excited because we're big fans of Polymer at Longhash. Not at all, of course, because we have partnered up. No, I think as more chains are being spun up and realizing that rollups are going to become abundant and purpose-built, we're realizing the fragmentation is getting worse by the day. And I just can't imagine that this is the best we can do when you open up your wallet and you see your staked ETH coming in like 10 to 12 different flavors as you experiment with more chains, which I do encourage people to do, to just try out more chains. Like, can you imagine when you order Uber that you have to choose like which server you want to order your Uber on? Like, that's ridiculous. And that's the state that we're in. So there has to be a better way to interact in the multi-chain future.
Yeah, I think Roy brings up a great point, right? Like, I think personally, and I think as a fund, we've been very excited about crypto and blockchain because we think it's a technology that can radically, improve people's lives and give them more sovereignty. But to really move towards a future where, people have much more control over their experience in digital worlds, right? User experience is a huge problem. And like Roy pointed out today, when you try and use a blockchain, right? Having to just, figure out exactly like all the 10 steps you need to take to try and do what you want to do is ridiculous. Today, when you open up a fintech app, you don't do that. You press a button and everything happens on the back end for you, right? Whereas in crypto, that's not the case. You need to figure out everything you want to do. No one does it for you automatically, right? And I think interoperability is a huge part in, improving this UX issue that users face today.
Yeah, on that note, I've also thought the same in terms of like the user experience for onboarding to be like a huge barrier for bringing on like the masses. Not necessarily the best example but one app that I saw recently that I thought was like taking one step further in convenience was onboarding Ethereum onto Friendtech. I don't know how many of you guys did that, but it wasn't super clean, but it was cleaner than most other apps that are out there. Have you guys seen any other applications or solutions that have helped make this easier?
Yeah, I think Telegram trading bots, but that's like custodied. But that's obviously a trade-off you make, right? You take less decentralization for better user experience. And I think that's a trade-off that will continue to be made.
But I think this also brings up like an interesting point, right? Like I think improving the user experience of crypto, right? Like there's multiple ways of doing it. And I think, personally, I'm most excited about, I think, solutions that improve the user experience, allow people to onboard onto their favorite apps in crypto, but does not compromise on the values of the industry, right? So things like, if you think about the traditional way of onboarding, you download a wallet, it gives you 12 or 24 words that you're supposed to write down. That really sucks. You try and get your mom or your sister or your grandma to do it, fat chance it's not happening, right? But if you use something like maybe a smart contract wallet, right, and you can abstract all that away, sign in with like a social account, similar to, I guess, what Privy has done with Friendtech, but maybe introducing some of these elements that are much more crypto native later on, you can improve the user experience without compromising on the values of crypto. And I think, with some of these Telegram trading bots, some of them are much more insecure. And I think, personally, they do compromise on the values a little bit. And I prefer to see UX solutions that can get us the best of both worlds.
Yeah, but I think it also depends on the use case. It's sort of a trade-off, right? If I would onboard 10 million into crypto, I'm actually very happy that the user experience is not smooth and I need to do a lot of steps because it makes me feel secure. Whereas if I want to trade $50 on a Telegram trading bot, it's a risk reward kind of thing. And I think that compromise, obviously, you don't want to make it, but I do think it's somewhat inherent, similar to setting up a bank account for an entity compared to a person, right? There's more steps involved and it just is more a hassle. I think that will also remain in crypto. I don't think you can ever even the playing field entirely for your grandma, sister, or mother. And let's say a large institution looking to put 1 billion to work in USDC.
I think the last exponential increase in user experience I've felt personally is bridging Atom over to Osmosis for the first time, like two and a half years ago or something. And to be honest, I don't know if I've felt like, oh my God, this is like 1,000 times better, like past that, right? Where, really it showcases how great the IBC technology is. I don't see there being a better bridge in existence right now that can do what IBC does. But yeah, to your point, there's not, if thinking about it just from a Cosmos ecosystem perspective right now, there's not a lot of MPC solutions or solutions to be moving a lot of money within the Cosmos ecosystem to where you're not going to see these huge whales participating in DeFi until that infrastructure is built.
I'll take a pause. I want to try to tailor the questions more towards the audience. Quick question for the audience. Can you raise your hand if you are a developer? Can you raise your hand if you're an investor? All right. Can you raise your hand if you're raising capital right now? Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. I'm going to take the easy question first, then I'll work backwards. So I guess for the panelists, what has been, and this is hopefully helpful for those that are raising, what has been the fund's thesis in the past few months, also looking forward over the next 6 months of what you guys are looking out for when you do your due diligence for new investments?
The past 6 months, I would say we've definitely shifted a little bit from infrastructure to application investing as well. We have in the past made mostly infrastructure investments. I think I speak for the whole industry. That's also where most of the returns have come from, right? It's easy to underwrite because you don't pick one specific use case. You just shoot at all of them. However, over the last few months, we have sort of seen okay, to make the infrastructure useful, you also need applications, right? Obviously, that comes with a different risk. So you also have to price that in as a venture fund and to be able to underwrite it. But over the last 2 months, we've made an investment in a European stablecoin. We're not in Europe, but we think that stablecoins are one of the large drivers of adoption. If you just look at volume that stablecoins do compared to like payment providers in Web 2, that sort of proves it. I think Brevin Howard had a great report on that. And in addition, we made an investment into a payment card, which sort of ties into the stablecoin, right? Being able to pay easily with your crypto. To me, makes a lot of sense. We've seen a lot of payment cards already by Binance, etc. Right? We thought this one was better because it had better regulatory setup. A little bit more boring than what we like usually do with CK, MEV, and that sort of stuff. But I do think these type of products are much needed at this point.
Yeah.
If you could summarize that in one sentence, how would you?
Right now, we're looking more at applications over infrastructure. Historically, we look more at applications.
Yeah, we're looking at projects that can bring on board new users, new assets, and new use cases. I think we've hit an inflection point where the evolution at the infrastructure middleware layer over the past about year and a half has provided enough of a hotbed for a new round of Darwinism at the application layer. And like I can give a couple of examples. I think at internet scale, we need quality assets on chain. And that's where, because I think everyone here today can arguably be labeled as a prosumer. Like we do go through length to try out new technologies, which is great. But at internet scales, like people are going to trade things that they understand. And most folks like won't understand, 99% of the tokens that are being listed today. So quality assets need to come on chain at internet scale. We're interested in bringing on board new users, double clicking on FriendTech. I think turning network into net worth, turning reputation into valuation. We're interested in seeing more 0 to 1 financialization of digital assets that was not possible before without the use of blockchain. So that's over the next 6 months, we're paying a lot of attention.
I think we're focused on similar things to both, what Roy and Mathijs has mentioned, right? Like, I think if you think about the previous cycle, we had, lots of DeFi applications blow up. And what that ended up showing was that we had massive deficits in the infrastructure we had to build. We pointed out some of the UX problems earlier. We pointed out some of this, it also pointed out some of the scaling issues that the industry has been facing. But I think the last year and a half, we've seen a lot of scaling solutions finally come to market. We've seen lots of, tooling that improves user experience for users too, also come to market, stuff like account abstraction, new MPC wallets, stuff like that. And so it also feels to us that finally the infrastructure has matured to the point where, building applications makes sense. And so for us, we're in particular looking at applications that we think have very innovative go-to-market strategies. Crypto is still very much so a niche market today. There are not many, there's maybe a few million total on-chain users, right? If we ever want to reach the scales that we all hope the industry can get to, we need, applications that users actually want to use, but that also have very innovative go-to-market strategies, right?
Yeah, so we primarily were only infrastructure investors as well until recently. I think now we're looking at things that support ultimately these execution layers that we've been making investments in over the past 2 years. And we have 4 investors on our team, but as me, who's been at Figment Inc. for a long time as well, definitely looking at how we can get more institutions involved in the ecosystem that we've made investments in. So we're looking at compliance solutions. We're also looking at custodial wallet solutions, MPC solutions for institutions. To where ultimately, the next cycle, you don't want the majority of volume, on centralized exchanges or controlled by, single entities. I mean, we experienced that problem, some in this room maybe firsthand over the last 2 years. But ultimately, you want to pay the protocol, I think, not the company long term. And the goal, the way you get there, right, is by making the decentralized application and the decentralized protocol more accessible to everyone. We have experience working with those folks, so that's what we've been looking at a lot more as of recent.
That's very insightful. I think it's also in line with how I and our team have been viewing this space recently. I think there's this jumping back and forth, like it's basically a cycle of building as well, of like people building out infrastructure. Like Ethereum came first, and then applications came on Ethereum, and then other alt L1s came, and then now it's like rollups as a service and different types of rollups and tools to build the rollups. And now everyone's like, all right, we got to invest in these companies that are going to build the rollups and the applications and the app chains. I think it's definitely, if I had to synthesize what you guys were saying, it sounded like you guys are shifting from investing in infrastructure to investing in applications that are using the infrastructure that has been built in this last investment cycle.
There's a lot of empty blocks. Now you need to fill them up with something, preferably good things. But
Yeah.
I mean, bad things can work too if it's permissionless.
A lot of investment put into like scaling solutions, and now that we've increased the capacity and the upper limit for applications, having applications go test that limit, basically.
Yeah, at the same time, if you note that we all sort of gave the same answer, as an investor, it might actually make more sense to start looking at infrastructure again, because it's less consensus, right? So this does wake me up like, okay, we're all looking at applications now.
But I mean, the second a transaction fee on Ethereum is $300 again for a month, and everyone's going to go, we need more scalability solutions. So, I think unless you're doing something unique, i.e. like dedicated block space on a rollup, to where you are maybe creating a permissioned or semi-permissioned or like a specific use case for that block space, that's still interesting because, ultimately that can be, like Cosmos, you call it an app chain anyway, right? So you can vertically integrate an offering that, is in between infrastructure and applications. But I think having, a generic layer one, permissionless protocol, I don't think that's necessary for this space right now, because there's plenty of ones that offer a variety of use cases already.
We have some time left. I actually wanted to see if we had any questions in the audience. I wanted to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, awesome. We do have questions. Oh. I think we also have a volunteer to help run the mic. All right, until we have that ready, I'll bring it down.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Ram, run router protocol, cross-chain interoperability play. What do you guys think is a realistic estimation of when we make the transition from just asset transfer bridges to actual, message transfer applications that actually use cross-chain, not just for token transfer? I mean, open question to anybody in the audience.
Is the question not just moving assets?
Yeah, I mean, most of the use cases are just about token transfer right now. 90% of use cases are just token transfer, right? What's your best case estimate on when we see the big inflow of, actual applications that use cross-chain yield farms and perp swaps and all the stuff that really abstracts out individual chains? When do you think those apps will really hit the market?
I think he's asking basically when we're switching from interoperability being primarily asset transfers to message transfers that don't necessarily focus on token transfers.
I think that happens when the main thing that users want to do on chain stops being speculating on new coins and new farms and new protocols. So when we have innovative applications that users actually want to use that don't involve financial use cases, then I think the vast majority of interoperability message passing is going to switch from token transfers to other messages that don't involve tokens.
Yeah, I would agree there. And I also think it depends on, you mentioned app chains earlier. If we see a lot of these go live and some of these apps get actual traction, then it starts making more sense for them to communicate with each other. I don't have like an exact timeline, but hopefully within a year. But don't hold me to that.
I think, even for messaging protocols, the use cases might involve assets for a while because that's just like so native to the blockchain use cases. But what I'm excited about is not have the trust component be at the messaging layer, but having a more modular infrastructure where the messaging can just focus on the messaging layer and leaving kind of the trust assumptions, the state verifications to the other layers in the interoperability space. I think that alone can really open up bandwidth. So kind of each layer focused on its own purpose.
I think also like, the earlier Cosmos Hub vision was, ultimately like a router for all of the ecosystem. Having something where you can have just a plug and play solution for that instead of having to integrate to every single execution layer or state machine that you want to engage with as an app developer for your end users. It's, it extremely helpful piece of technology that can exist to kind of streamline this.
I personally think it'll stay majority with DeFi and asset transfer, at least in the short to midterm. I think there's a lot of speculation around like increasing volume coming from like gaming and NFTs. Governance likely won't have such a significant impact on volume, but there's likely going to be growth in how governance decisions on one chain create events on other chains. I think one way that we could, if we wanted to dig deeper into trying to predict how this might shift, would be to look at how, like, what percentage of internet transactions using like, TCP/IP are for banks and like dollars being moved around, dollars and other currencies, versus like Facebook or YouTube interactions. But I think we're a little far away from having a social network that will take up a lot of block space, or I also don't think that streaming videos is going to be something that blockchains will try to solve for either. Maybe digital identity could be one thing that could increase volume if you're checking identity frequently.
I mean, access control in general it would be something that would move the needle for sure, especially if like storage layers get leveraged a lot more.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the question. Does anyone else have a question? We can start a line over there. Sweet.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Super interesting. I have just a simple question. There's a lot of, there's many applications that try to solve interoperability and make a multi-chain world extremely simple with these messaging protocols. And would you say that Polymer, compared to the competition, what's the innovations and why is it the best solution, like according to you, if you think it is, for solving this issue? Would be really interested to know the thoughts of the investors on that. Why did they choose Polymer specifically rather than something else?
Yeah, I think Polymer is the more sort of decentralized or trustless solution of the ones out there, and also offers more standardization, which sort of fits into the roll-up thesis or modular thesis or whatever you want to call it. We believe that a lot of different execution environments will exist. So things like a Fuel VM, an EVM, Solana VM with Eclipse and whatnot. I think then you need standardization for these to talk to each other. I also think Polymer is more trustless than, let's say, a multi-sig bridge. The question there is more, when will that start to matter? And that's also a question of adoption, right? The more value goes through these systems, the more secure you want them to be, the more likely there is to be an exploit if it's less secure. And that will force users to use the more trustless and more decentralized and secure version.
So I think there's a few parts to this, right? Like, firstly, I think if you look at all the interoperability solutions out there today, the one that's the most battle tested and most robust is IBC as a message passing system, right? And what Polymer is basically trying to do is they're trying to bring IBC to all the chains and standardize a message passing solution that all chains adopt to be IBC, which in my opinion makes a lot of sense because it's the most robust and battle tested solution out there, and it's also the most specified. I also think Polymer is, like Mathijs said, is the most trusted solution. It's fully secured by Ethereum. It's It's a rollup built on Ethereum that's going to help route messages across all these chains connected by IBC. And I think as a solution, that just makes much more sense to me than most of the competitors out there.
I think I want to comment real quick. Oh, obviously appreciate you guys making this much easier for me to explain. I think this goes back to the whole point of why we're doing this event and bringing people in here is because my co-founder and I spent time looking at all the different interoperability solutions and realized everyone's trying to engage in vendor lock-in, or they're all trying to compete with business development. And we really resonated with the original values of blockchains and the technical values of blockchains. And we thought the main thing causing all these exploits are points of centralization. What's the most decentralized solution out there? And we found how IBC had been transacting within Cosmos without exploits in a purely neutral, open, decentralized way. And we thought, this is a general specification that can be applied to other blockchains. Let's bring it to other blockchains. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, I can't overemphasize the importance of trust minimization. When we look at the landscape of interoperability solutions, it's basically trust humans, trust game theory, or trust code. And it turns out trusting code, of course, theoretically, ideally would like to trust code, but it's expensive. So, just to verify the Tendermint consensus on EVM is tens of millions in gas. That's not viable. So I really appreciate the kind of ground laying work that's been done by the Polymer team over the past couple of years to get to a point where, okay, we have trust minimization. And what that means is also scalability. So we can create a hub and spoke model of servicing different types of consensus mechanisms so that new chains in a kind of multi-chain feature can just plug into it and instantly have a one-to-end relationship of interoperability. And I think it makes a lot more sense in terms of if you think about flights, you have sort of the hub cities that you fly to and connecting to other cities. You don't have a direct flight between, I don't know, Egypt and Cairo and let's say Ankara, for example, you'll get routed through Istanbul as a major hub city. And that just makes sense in the world that we live in and probably would make more sense in an on-chain world as well.
We're a vibes investor, and Peter and Bo are super fucking cool. But outside of that, I think, especially for other investors in the room, I mean, when you see something working, sometimes it's best just to absolutely lean into it. And I mean, my experience, degenning on Osmosis and going back and forth between the Cosmos Hub and Osmosis 2 years ago, I was this is obviously the best solution I've used before. I can't wait for a team to make the UX better. And then, we met them. But I mean, also, I'm sure most people in this room spend 110% of their life in this space. And there's still things that some of us can barely use because it's so complicated. As you get to the cliche of the next billion people using this technology, you have to make assumptions that the percentage of time that they're going to spend in this space dramatically decreases. To where some people are maybe spending 10 minutes on, a crypto app, but they could be transacting a lot of value, but they're not going to read documentation or deal with shitty UX. And so that's kind of my thesis on the infrastructure interoperability.
I think it's worth pointing out that we are all investors in Polymer. You can probably find someone to steelman this very easily, but it's probably not us.
Yeah, definitely good to give disclosure. I invited our investors onto this panel. So
can we, next time maybe have a non-investor.
We have so many though. Just appreciate the question. I guess one point to wrap up on this question is that really appreciate all the answers about the research we've done, the technology that we've been driving, the difficult work in implementing these innovations over the past couple of years. I think a call to action for those in the audience is that to really help amplify the journey for us, help us also spread awareness about IBC. For us, it's not, we're not naming these events Polymer in Istanbul. We're naming them IBC Istanbul because we want to share more about IBC globally. I think a lot of people associate IBC with Cosmos, and Cosmos, for the most part, has one main event every year at Cosmoverse. For us, we want IBC Istanbul to be like, or IBC Istanbul / what we're building in terms of IBC summits to be similar to like IBC Global, where they start becoming a network of community events driven by people like you and hosted everywhere to help raise the community and to have more awareness brought about potential solutions that can solve our centralized interoperability problems in the industry. I think we have time for one more question from the audience. 2 more if they're fast.
I'm from Cointelegraph Accelerator, and we built our project to make Cointelegraph Accelerator as a good mark for potential VCs. Like, okay, this project passed through Cointelegraph Accelerator. Let's have a look at them just because of it, right? And we have plenty players like Brink, like Outlier Ventures. Longhash has accelerator, right? And what kind of programs has value, according to your view, to your experience, as a good boost for early stage startup?
So just to summarize the question, it sounds like when you look for early stage startups coming out of accelerators, what qualities do you look for in both the startup, the founders, and the accelerator? Let's do 1 sentence answer so we can do another question.
You like Binance Labs or Outlier Ventures, wherever. What is a good sign for you?
I think we look at them just like any other venture deal. So we look at founder quality, potential market size for the product. Depends a little bit on the stage as well, of course. The technical implementation of what they're building. And these type of things, value capture, all the regular venture things, we don't really differentiate. Well, maybe with accelerators, we look a little bit like, okay, how much ownership did they give up in exchange for the value that the accelerator brought? But apart from that, it's not, it's sort of like a pre-seed and we're the seed round. So we don't make a huge difference.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Accelerator is sort of like a means to an end. Like you don't invest in an accelerator, you gotta look at the cohort projects the same as you look at everything else. And especially us, like the Longhash Accelerator, for example, has its own set of economics and they're not guaranteed a check from the venture fund on the way out. Of course, we kind of build a relationship during that time. So we get to know them and have a little bit more context in terms of evaluation. But ultimately, the conviction's formed just like any other projects.
And then I think we had another, yep.
Hello, it's Nick at Cadena. Just wanted to find out, really from a reaction point of view, from the Cardano summit last week where they announced they're going to be going with some form of Polkadot substrate. How do we make sure that we don't get fragmentation between what are the interoperability layers going forward? IBC, the Polkadot solution, what kind of work do you see being required to make sure that we can keep all the different interoperabilities interoperable between themselves?
Yeah, you all use Polymer?
So I think this goes back to earlier. I had mentioned how it's not just blockchains and applications that have been proliferating, it's also interoperability solutions. I think that we'll see a consolidation over the next few years. There will likely be 2 main categories that we'll see users consolidate to. One will be speed, and the other will be security. And then eventually, as security becomes speedier and cheaper, it'll consolidate in that direction. I think that'll also, there could be a catalyst towards that transition if there's also more exploits for the speedy solutions. Usually, if something's speedier or faster, it's because it's got more central points of centralization. I think from like an audience perspective, from like what we as an industry can and I would suggest should do is to actually go through and look at the architecture of the existing solutions, the ones that are used the most, and why they're the ones used the most. I think internally within my team, we have a lot of debates around. We kind of analyze the different projects over the past few years and have, to the point that our panelists have said, is that Polymer is very great with tech. You know, they've done a lot of research and development. They're pushing new frontiers for decentralization, for interoperability. But I'm a business guy. My background's in business, and I'm thinking like the best tech doesn't always win. And you need a lot of business development and you need to drive adoption for technology to win. So in terms of like a repeated call to action, it's take a look at the interoperability solutions, take a look at what we're doing with IBC, and I guess a small plug. My co-founder will be presenting later today. He'll be sharing more about the latest research that we've done, and also there will be an exclusive link to sign up early for our testnet. So, cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for paneling.